how on earth am I going to do a thumbnail for this? Oh lord. Oh no. Okay, wait. Oh no. This book should not have been placed at the bottom. Oh no. No. Oh lord. Oh god. Okay. Oh no. Oh, that's dangerous. Oh, please don't fall over. Okay, no books were harmed. We're okay. No, don't fall over. That was stressful. Hi everyone, it's Jenny. Welcome back to my channel. So, I recently turned 27 and I thought it would be fun to do a list of 30 books I want to read before I'm 30 because I have 3 years then to do it in, and I've only whacked out the bold lipstick for this new project. I'm very excited. I've got my flappiest jumper on. So I'm going to go through this list of books. It was really hard for me to choose. I've probably chosen too many long ones. There were some books I wanted to put on the list, but I didn't because I had to really think about picking books that I already own a lot of the time, or my parents own so I could easily borrow them, or picking books, a lot of the time they're ones that I've had on my shelves for a really shamefully long time and I just want to push myself to get to them, to reduce my TBR and to not neglect them any longer. Or they're classics, obviously. It's not necessarily a very diverse list, but that's because I'm focusing on the books that I own. I did want to pick books like Les Miserables because I do really want to read that, but it's a book I don't own and it's so long and I just had enough long ones already. And I got some recommendations as well, like Bill Bryson's A Short History of Nearly Everything, and as great as that sounds, again, it's very long, and do I really want to read that in the next 3 years? No, I don't. So I'm going to go through the books that I don't currently have physically with me, and then I'm going to go into these precarious piles next to me of ones I do have. So the first book is The Longest Journey by E.M. Forster because it's the only novel I've not read by him. It's his second novel. I have not heard anyone say it's his favourite, but I'm pretty sure Forster said it was his own favourite. And I always think it's interesting to read a book by an author that they themselves admired or were fond of, and I just want to read all of Forster because I love him. And then I also have June. This is really embarrassing, I can't remember who it's by, but the film is coming out in October, and again, it's very long, but it would stretch me a bit because I don't read fantasy or sci-fi normally at all, and I know it's part of a series. I'm not a series gal, so I'm only intending to read the first one, but I like to read the book before I see the film. So that is what I'm pretty sure I will read before October. A classic that I really feel sad I haven't read is The Canterbury Tales by Chaucer because I am an English student. I have never studied Chaucer. I've never studied anything older, actually, than Shakespeare or Christopher Marlowe. So that's a little sad, and it's definitely his best known works. It's apparently quite funny. I did ages ago see a play of a few of the tales, and I just think it would be interesting to read something from that far ago. Though obviously the translation, I cannot read Middle English. Plus, I strategically bought my dad a copy for Christmas so I can borrow that off him. Quite a few of these books I will definitely be borrowing from my parents, one of which actually is War and Peace by Tolstoy because I read and loved Anna Karenina, and War and Peace is his other big, I suppose most people would say that is his magnum opus, but I know lots of people do actually prefer Anna Karenina. Interesting. I want to make up my own mind. I have not watched any series or anything, although I do know what happens to one character, but it's a typical sprawling Russian saga, and I just think it'll be so interesting learning about Napoleonic Wars and that kind of thing. At least I think it's Napoleonic. No, it's not Napoleonic. Some war, okay? And it's one of those books that is always on books you should read before you die lists, and even though I have looked at those and disagreed with quite a few of them before, that is one I'm on board with that, you know? Then I have Sula by Toni Morrison because I'm reading through her novels and I really want to end with reading Sula, so I've read 3 so far. I've got a 4th one to read by her, but I just like the idea of ending with a really good one that's a bit more famous, and either that or Song of Solomon, but I really want to read Sula within the next 3 years because I hope to have finished reading all of her novels, which I believe there are 10 of them in the next 3 years. And then another book that I really feel like I should have read is Fahrenheit 451. It's very famous. I like dystopian books, so I'm sure I'll enjoy that as well. Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, just so beloved. have loved all the other things I've read by her. I've read everything by her but that, so it's just about time I got to it. Romola by George Eliot. She's another author I want to read everything by, but this one just sounds so different because it's historical fiction, it's set in the Renaissance period, and Romola herself just sounds like such an interesting character. She's a woman who has to kind of strike out on her own. I think her husband is a piece of bad work, and I just often hear people talk about her other novels, not this one, so very interested to read a Victorian novel that is historical in itself, because I love historical fiction and Victorian literature, so it sounds like the perfect book for me. Then I have The Razor's Edge by Somerset Maugham, because I really enjoyed The Painted Veil, and this was the one I was torn between buying Painted Veil or The Razor's Edge, so now I've read The Painted Veil, time to read The Razor's Edge, which I think is a kind of 20th century society novel, but I'm not sure. It's my jam, probably. Another recommendation from my dad is An Instance of the Finger Post by Ian Pearce. This is set in the 1660s, which is a period I don't read about, so it will be nice, but it's apparently a book that's narrated by multiple narrators, and you have unreliable narrators who all have different points of view about what's happened. I think it's about a woman who's accused of murdering a man within the church, I think, and it's long. So many of these books are long, over half of them are long, I think, but I love multiple narrators in books, and I love historical fiction, and I think it sounds like such an interesting concept, and there's a lot about science and religion in that time in the book, I do believe. Then my last recommendation from my dad, which is kind of a cheat because it's not really like one book, but is the first volume of the Forsyth Saga by John Galsworthy, which is a book about the Forsyth family who are, I think it starts at the end of the 19th century, and it is talking about how the positions in society and aristocracy are kind of diminishing and eroding, and the way that they're trying to hold on to that status. And I'm just going to say, as long as I've read the first book within that volume, I'm happy. I'm not going to try and necessarily read all of those 3 novels, but I think individually they're not actually very long, it's just collectively it looks like a really big book. But I've heard the first volume is the best. I think there's 2 or 3 volumes, so I've never read anything by him before. That will be quite nice. I think the transition between the 19th and 20th century is a really interesting period. Okay, so that's all the books I don't have physically. I'm sorry, I'm so aware this is probably going to be a long video, but onto the books in no particular order that I do have with me. This is The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, a book I've had for quite a while, and one of his most famous. I have learnt about the Great Depression in America in the 30s, so I think I'll have some good historical context going into this, because it's all about that and the Dust Bowl and how that decimated the agricultural part of America, like California and Oklahoma. So that, though I know this is going to be so sad, I think it's going to be some good writing, because I've only read his short books like Travels with Charlie or Of Mice and Men, and I haven't read a kind of heavy hitter yet, so I'm excited to read this because I don't actually know what happens. Then a book, The Weather in the Streets by Rosamund Lehman, which is just, I feel like it's about an affair, but I can never really remember, and I just like to not know much about a lot of these books going in, but I basically bought it for the cover, and then Elizabeth Day, who I love, recommended it, so it's enough for me. Then I have, again, this is not really one book, but it's 2, but I'll also read one of them at least. This is the Berlin novels by Christopher Isherwood. I loved A Single Man by him before, but this is very different. This is the inspiration for Cabaret, and I think learning about Berlin in the late 30s, just before the Second World War, will again be fascinating, because I really like the Second World War history, and I think his writing style will be really great with that setting. A book that's like, I've definitely put in a few to you hours before. This is The Warden by Anthony Trollope, because I will read the Bastard Chronicles series. I've read number 3, I've read number 5, out of 6. This is the first one. It's a very good place to start, so I'm determined to read this soon, hopefully this year for this one. Another one I hope to read this year, this is The Life of Charlotte Bronte by Elizabeth Gaskell. It's what it says in the tin. There aren't very many non-fiction books in here, but this is one of them. Again, quite long, but I think I will enjoy, at least mostly. Another actually non-fiction one is, oh my gosh. Yeah, sorry, say the title, Jenny, come on, profession. This is 1,000 Years of Annoying the French by Stephen Clarke, and I'm pretty sure I bought this in 2010 or 2011, so I've had this at least 10 years, and my dad read it and loved it, so it just needs to happen soon. I'm thinking of picking this for my non-fiction November this year. I know I'll find it very interesting, but I just have avoided it because it's so long. So this is maybe not the year, but within this 3-year period, I will find the time to read you. Yes. Then, another book I've had for a couple of years. This is a growing theme, you guys. This is Alias Grace by Margaret Atwood. I think it's about a servant who's accused of murder. And there was a mini-series that came out, I think it came out in 2017, and that's when I bought it. So I've probably had it since then. And then, of course, did not read the book. So, gonna rectify that so I can finally watch that mini-series I was very excited about. Then I have Valley of the Dolls by Jacqueline Suzanne, and I think this is about a couple of girls who want to be actresses. So that's like very much up my street. And I don't know when I bought this, but this must have been, I probably had this 4 or 5 years as well. This is Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. A very complex book. I know it has lots of different narrators and lots of different time periods and locations. It sounds quite complex, but I just think it sounds really clever. But it is, quite small print. And again, it's over 500 pages of, small print. So I think I'm just not going to get to it unless I put it on this list. Then, thankfully, a short one. This is One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, which by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Sorry, Russian people, but I think I will read this soon. Yes, because it's short. I need to make sure I do try and pace myself with the long ones though, otherwise I'm just going to read all the short ones first and then never finish all the long ones. Then I have For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway. I've only read A Farewell to Aunt by him, which I enjoyed until the end when it had the most ridiculous birth scene I've ever read in my life, and it was one of those excellent examples of men writing women just terribly, not having a clue what it's like to be a woman. And this is another book that I probably got about 10 years ago. Yeah, maybe even more. It would have been one that I asked for Christmas pretentiously and then didn't actually read. So I want to read it. Yes. Then a book that is very, not abstract necessarily, but just not very well known, is My Uncle Oswald by Roald Dahl, who was one of my favourite children's authors. I also love his adult short stories, but this is, I think, the only thing I've not read by him, which is an adult novel, and I think it's quite weird. I think it's quite dark, like his short stories, and I don't know anything about it, but I just want to say I have read all of Roald Dahl, basically. Then, the only Asian book actually on this list, this is The Makioka Sisters by Junichiro Tanizaki, who's a Japanese writer, and it's about, I think, 4 sisters, yes, and I think it goes through quite a long time period about their family, and it just sounds like my jam. Basically, someone has described this to me as a kind of Victorian style novel, and that alone is enough to convince me I will enjoy it. Then I have Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, and again, I'm not going to try and read the whole African trilogy. As long as I read the first one, which is definitely the most famous book in the trilogy, I will be happy, because I bought it 2 years ago. Honestly, what am I like? Then I have A Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. See, I just roll my arms like I know what I'm doing. I don't speak Spanish, I'm so sorry. But this, I think, is it a thriller or something? But look, it's a shiny edition, woo. And it's set in 1945, and I just remember my dad reading it years ago and loving it. So I know much my dad a lot, but we have very similar taste in books, so what can I say? I love recommendations a lot, I trust him, and this is another one that he recommended to me. The only poetry I have on this list is Fleurs du Mal, or Flowers of Evil, by Charles Baudelaire. That was very exaggerated French accents. Fleurs du Mal, the depressing, decadent French poetry. Half of this is in French, half of this is in English. It isn't as long as it looks, thank goodness. So this half is English. So, but it's still a good 200 pages of poetry, which is just, quite long for poetry. But I have read extracts of this for my fantasy lecture course, and I just like to read all of it because I think he's a really interesting poet. And then a book that once again I've had for a long time because it won the Booker in 2013. This is The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton, and my gosh, is this fat to hold? Gosh. But it's set in New Zealand, and I don't read anything set in New Zealand or by New Zealand authors. And again, it's 19th century, is sort of Victorian-y in style, I have been told by someone. So I really just need, again, to put this on my list so it will push me to read it soon in the next 3 years of my life. And a book that I think I'm surprised myself that I didn't read as a child, having loved the Muppets version, but this is Treasure Island by, I almost said Muppets Treasure Island, no, just Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. Wouldn't that have been amazing though, a Victorian Muppets? Oh, imagine. I am hoping to read this for October this year, but it's a story that I kind of know, but only through the Muppets, so I'm worried when I actually read this I'll be very disappointed because it won't actually be as entertaining without Rizzo and Gonzo and all the gang. We'll see. But it's nice to have a children's book in there. And then, last but not least, I have Manhattan Beach by Jennifer Egan, because I got this in January 2018. I remember it was half price in the January sale, I was all excited, and then didn't read it. So I am committing to it soon, within the next 3 years, which I think is quite soon in my reading life. So there we go. That's a big old pile of books that I want to read. I'm not necessarily expecting that I will read 10 within a year, but I was thinking each birthday I will check in and tell you how I'm doing with the project, and which ones I have read and which ones I hope to read within that next year. And hopefully I can do pretty well so that I don't reach the 3rd year and panic because I've got 14 still to read. We'll see. But let me know if you think I should prioritise any of these, because I'm sure you will have read or at least have heard of some of them. Yeah, and I don't want to suggest more books. I have found it so hard to narrow these down, I have to say. I had to really, it was tough. I had to be strong. So I'm excited for all of them, and I hope I enjoy all of them. It'd be pretty sad, especially since I've waited a long time to read a lot of them, to not enjoy them. But I hope that was fun, and I will see you soon on Bookish Shenanigans. Bye!